I haven't done a Q&A video here on the channel in quite some time, and there is a bunch of questions that keep popping up over and over again. So, let's get stuck in. How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. I'm Jesse, and this is Still It, but if you're watching this video, I guess you already know that, don't you? Alright guys, so the long and short of it is that I haven't done a video like this in quite some time because I just sort of assumed that it wasn't something that people were into. But some of the videos that I assumed that about, that I've been putting up lately, have done a whole lot better than I thought they would. So I figured I'd give it another nudge. And it's up to you guys to tell me whether or not you want it. We'll see sort of how it does, what the metrics are like, whether or not you guys just think this is boring. Thumbs up, thumbs down to let me know. And if you do want this to keep happening, I'll probably put it in as a midweek video going forward, not, you know, the main video of the week, but I figured I'd give it a test this week. Drop a comment in the comment section down below with a question that you want answered. And if you're going to do so too, if you don't want your name called out or mentioned next time I do one of these videos, say so in the comment, okay? I'm cool with that. I don't want to call you out if you don't want to be called out, but I'm happy to if you are. In this video, I'm going to leave names out of it because I just don't know. All right, enough of that. Let's get stuck right in, shall we? So, the first question, how many stills do you actually have now, Jesse? I am curious. Very good question, sir, and to be perfectly honest with you, I'm starting to find it a little bit hard to keep track of things. I can see most of them from here, so it's not too bad. I have the little mini pot still. Let's start from smallest to largest, I guess. And I use that mostly for little test runs and honestly mostly for gin. I love it. I really do. I'm glad I've got it. I also have the claw hammer still, which is a kind of one of those milk can style dealies. And that has everything above the boiler is modular, which is awesome. I love that still as well. I can run it as a pot still, I can run it as a plated reflux still, and it has a gin basket as well with options for copper and stainless parts for a few different things. I also have the T500. Honestly guys, the more I use that thing, the more I think it's a pretty decent entry into the hobby for a lot of people. But if you factor in availability on where people can get it versus what else they might be able to get in that area, yeah, it's a pretty solid option with a few modifications. It's a pretty decent little still. I also have the CCVM / pot still, the one that I first built when I started the channel. And to preface that, I should say that I didn't build the pot, the boiler. That was very, very kindly donated to the channel, so thank you very much, Andrew. In addition to that, I've also got the 4-inch column section, which is 3 plates and a deflag, which is what I have for that at the moment. And then moving on from that, I have the Genio, which to be honest, I don't use so much as the Genio thing. I use it mostly as a stripping still, and mostly I use it when I have things that are chunky and I want to distill or to strip off the grain or off whatever it is that's in there, you know, like the grappa is a good example of that. You know, I wouldn't want to go sticking a whole lot of grape skins into an exposed element. So there you have it, guys. That is the harem at the moment, and I am very, very lucky to be able to have all those different stills. I guess it's just one of the perks of running a channel like this. Next question. A bunch of people asked me what the base spirit was for the maceration versus vapor infusion gin video I did a little while ago. This isn't like a really pressing question, I guess, but the reason I'm putting it into this video is because it was very silly of me to not mention it. It was the TPW, the Birdwatchers, and I use that because it's good for gin, but I also have another large batch of neutral on the way, and I wanted to use the TPW up. Going back to the little mini pot still. A bunch of people ask me all the time why I have copper hanging out the end of that thing, out of the little spout. It is not anything functional in terms of the distillation. It's not about improving flavor. It is literally there just to wrangle drops from the still into the glass so they don't go wayward and go all over the place. That's all it does. For those of you out there that would rather use a schlong bone, all power to you, I guess. I think you're crazy, but Yeah. Do you have a distillery notebook that you suggest for keeping track of runs, one to the next? No, I don't. And the reason for that is I started like trying to develop a spreadsheet or something that I would use, but it ended up being very, very complicated, I guess. It's hard to have a standard notebook that gives me places to put, or, you know, like spaces to put everything that I would want. Because depending on what I'm making, I want to know different things. There's just a lot of different things that sometimes are important and sometimes are not to me. And I kind of gave up on that idea, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm interested to hear what you guys use. Is there a template? Is there a specific thing that you do use, that you record things on every time you distill? If there isn't, what would you like to see? I'm interested. This next question came in like 5 times in the space of a day, and I don't know why. I don't know where it came from exactly, because it was on different videos and people asked 2 different questions that are very, very similar. What do I think about taking grain or specialty grain and whacking it into a gin basket to bump up the grainy flavors in a whiskey? Interesting. And what do I think about macerating spirits in a grain and then distilling it to bump up the grain flavor as well? Interesting. Honestly, I don't know, guys, because I haven't tried it. I could see it being great. I could see it going horribly wrong. If I had to guess, I would say that it would be somewhere in between. I do not think that it would give you exactly the same flavors as you know, actually doing a full mash, but who knows? I don't know. What I do know is that there is a company here in New Zealand. Oh my word, I'm so bad, I can't remember who it was, and I can't even remember the name of the product. I think it was called Sweet Cheats? I think it was Sweet Cheats, something like that, something around the cheats. And it was basically like an infusion that so you distill a spirit that you're calling whiskey, and then you throw these sweet cheats into the final distilled product, let them age like that for a little bit, and then separate it out to add grain flavor into a final product that way. I'm a horrible person. I can't remember who it was that was doing it, and I can't remember the proper name. Someone help me out in the comments. I never tried it. Maybe I should try it. I haven't tried any of the above. Once again, guys, if you've tried it, let me know down below. I would be very interested. I do think that all of those options would be somewhat akin to UJSSM. So it's sort of flavoring the spirit with the grain rather than actually mashing from the grain. I don't know though. I think it'd be interesting. Maybe we should try it. These 2 questions are very, very similar, and they come up over and over again. What is the ideal ratio of spirit to wood? And what is the ideal ABV of spirit when you're putting it on wood? And the long and short of it, and the horrible cop-out answer is, it depends. It really does. What do you like? What are you aiming for? How long are you going to age it for? What are your personal preferences, and what are you hoping to get out of this? Are you trying to impersonate something else? Are you trying to create a clone of something else? Are you trying to come up with something new and different? What is the base spirit, and what is the wood that you're working with? Like, there's just so many things that go into this, and I know that's a horrible way of not giving you an answer. And I've made entire videos on these topics to try and kind of give more of an answer. But if you don't want to think about any of that shit, if you don't want to think about any of it, and you just give me a damn formula, Jesse, so I can do it, I'm going to say go with like 55% ABV if you sitting in the middle of sweet versus spicy and tannic and really woody sort of spirits. Go a little bit lower than that if you like more on the sweet side of things, so 50%. And you could probably bump it up a little bit if you think that you really like the spicy, the tannic side of things. Go up to maybe 57%, maybe 60%. In terms of ratio of wood, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you're wanting to get things done in like a month, the ratio of wood that I used for the T500 spirit that I just made and tested in the last main video, that was about good. That was really good volume, and from memory that was 2.5 litres with about 8 staves this big. And the reason I say that was good is because it crammed a bunch of flavor on in there in terms of wood flavor. You're not going to get more age on a spirit by adding more wood, but you will get more wood flavor. But it didn't overdo it too much, and it didn't get overly spicy or tannic. And that was about 8 pieces, about this long and about this square, for about 2.5 litres. So ratio that to whatever you want. If you want to age for a shorter amount of time than that, I would honestly suggest just giving it a month. There seems to be stages where it improves, it improves, it improves, and then it gets to a time range, about 3 to 5 weeks, where suddenly the flavor quality sort of just jumps, and then it plateaus out in a very slow, gradual thing again, and jumps again. So I'd suggest aiming for a month, because that's that first real big jump, at least in my experience. Next question, we're back to the Genio. This is a really interesting product. What do you think about adding one of those 500 litre units into a nano brewery project? For sure, if that's what you're after. Here's my position on the Genio. I think it is an amazing piece of tech. I think it is awesome from a geekery point of view. It is awesome for the people that love equipment and they get joy out of that. It makes them happier to distill. It makes them, you get what I mean, right? Some people are into the process and some people are into the equipment, and there's nothing wrong with either of those two things, in my opinion. Is what makes you happy. And this is kind of irrelevant whether you're doing it for a hobby or a job, I think, in some ways. I mean, as a hobby, obviously, whatever you enjoy the most, do that, because that's why you're doing it. As a business, I think there is definitely something to be said about weighing what you enjoy doing versus what is going to give you the most return on investment, I guess. But at the same time, if you don't enjoy it, I mean, why? Like, why are you getting into this industry if you're not going to enjoy it? It's not the sort of industry you want to get into if you just want to make a buck quick. Trust me, guys, it's not. At the same time, I think there is an enjoyment factor that goes along with getting into this hobby. That's up to you to decide. Let me tell you my actual thoughts on the Genio now. So, awesome piece of tech. I do enjoy using it because I am the sort of person that does enjoy equipment as well. But I think there are other products out there that will give you a larger return on investment depending on what you're making and how you want to go about it. So if you want to make large amounts of neutral spirit to then use for other things, or because you're just making vodka, and you want to be relatively hands-off on that, you want to be able to set it and forget it and be able to be, I don't know, maybe like standing there watching the still while you're also bottling, or standing there watching the still while you're, whatever, doing something else, you know, in the vicinity of it, that makes some sense. I can kind of get behind that, and I can kind of understand why you may want to lean towards a Genio. If you want to do anything other than making a buttload of neutral spirit, I just think there's better products out there for the money you're going to spend on it. That's me. Jesse, do you use clearing agents in your grain mashes? No, I do not. This question comes up all the time, and I think it's probably the people that have been into brewing first, that have switched over into distilling, that ask these questions. That sort of seems to make sense to me. But no, I do not. I let the fermentation completely finish, and then I let it chill, and almost all the stuff's going to fall to the bottom, and the spirit is going to clear out. At that point, there shouldn't be really any chunky stuff floating around in the top if you're fermenting on the grain. And if you're not fermenting on the grain, all of the krausen should have fallen down to the bottom as well. And then from there, I just rack it off the top, or like literally manually scoop it out of the top with a pot or a bucket and distill it that way. I have had no problems whatsoever with scorching, with burning things onto an element, with any of that stuff, doing it that way. So I've found no distinguishable difference in flavor between a wash that comes out crystal clear after doing that and something that's slightly opaque. I just don't get a flavor difference there. Certain yeast preferences that you use I could see potentially giving you an issue there. It's just not been a thing for me. What I did used to do in the past is use gelatin. If you guys don't know about gelatin, check it out on the homebrewing forums. They got a bunch of stuff for it. Quick tip, if you're going to use gelatin, don't overheat the stuff. Make sure you find an instructional video that tells you how to do it without overheating it. You don't want it to actually turn into jelly in your product. Anyway, moving on. This is a long one, so I will summarize. And basically it is in the video about whether or not home distilling saves you money. There was someone that caught on to the fact that I said that what I really like making is whiskey, because that's the product I really love. And yet, funnily enough, that's the specific area of spirits where I have yet to really make a product that I think is better than what I can go out and buy for, you know, 60 or 70 bucks. And how do I deal with that? How does that not bum me out? How do I stay motivated to keep trying? And I found this to be a really interesting question. It's a good question. And for me, it's an issue of perspective. So the reason I do this, the reason I am into this hobby is not because of what comes out of the still or out of the aging jar or out of the barrel or whatever it is at the end of the thing. It's the process, it's the enjoyment factor, all the way from the start of what am I going to make? How do I conceptualize this recipe? How do I build a recipe in my head? How do I go through all of the ideas of what's in that recipe and what might happen to it as it evolves into a real thing? And then as it evolves into a real thing, and as I've made it, how does that relate back to my theory of what it was going to taste like? Does it taste like what I thought it was going to taste like? Does it taste different? If it's different, what assumptions did I have back here that I need to reassess and change? So next time I do this process, I'm better at it. That's the joy in this for me. I like problem solving. I enjoy that process. And this hobby is the perfect avenue to be able to exercise that passion in a lot of different ways very often. So that's where the motivation comes from for me. But on the other side of it, it is easy to kind of get down on yourself if it doesn't work out the way you want it to. The thing that really helps me do it again next time is the fact that when I say my products aren't as good as what I can go out and buy, I'm trying to remove myself from the equation a little bit and judge that product based on objective goodness of the product. Like, how would you assess it if it was a competition? Not like, for example, if you don't like smoke, but you were a judge in a competition, how would you judge the smoky whiskey sitting in front of you to say whether or not it's good or better or great or shit? So objectively, I don't think my spirits are as good as, you know, the huge guys in the industry. Lefroy, Talisker, Ardbeg. They're just not. Two things here. One, these guys have been doing it for hundreds of years. Don't expect to get into a shed with a still without having a head distiller that's been doing it for 45 years next to you that can teach you how to do it and make something as good as them. Like, that would be really arrogant of me to think that I could, I think. The second thing is that when I go to the store, I don't get a specific choice of what I can make. I get a choice of what's there. So even though a spirit that I make is not objectively as good as what I could potentially get from the store, I might enjoy drinking it more. Does that make sense? I can make it exactly what I want. I can change it and morph it and adjust it to my personal flavor palette, to my personal preferences. And even though it's not necessarily as objectively great as something else, the fact that it is exactly in line with my preferences make it better. Does that make no sense whatsoever? I think it makes no sense whatsoever. I'm getting out of this question and going on to the next one because I'm digging myself a hole. Another thing that popped up a bunch, am I cool down here in New Zealand? Earthquake, tsunami, danger, all of that stuff. Honestly, we're fine. I slept right through the whole earthquake thing. I know it's old news now. We're miles from the beach, so I wasn't even worried about the tsunami. I'm a hermit. I don't leave the house. The only reason I leave the house is to buy ingredients to put into my still. So honestly, it didn't affect me. Is baker's yeast really that bad? Is it worth spending the extra money on specialty yeast or brewer's yeast? It's up to you, man. Here's the thing. This is your hobby. This is your project. You're doing it for personal use. What makes you happy? What makes you enjoy the spirits you're drinking? If you're using baker's yeast for everything and you like the product you're making, what's wrong with that? Keep doing it. And saying that, yes, I do think it makes a difference. And why not try one batch? Why not try one batch of something different just to see if it is different for you? Where it lands for me is I don't think it's worth the extra money when I'm making something that is a high ABV, it's going to be turned into neutral, or I'm going to end up distilling it like 4 times and making it into gin. I don't think the difference in flavour shows up there. I do definitely think that the difference in flavour shows up for something that is pot stilled, depending on the yeast selection that you make. And there's so many of them that I'm not going to get into them now. The long and short of it is just give it a nudge, do a small batch, give it a try, see if it works for you. Move on. Alright guys, there you have it, a Q&A video. Like I said, if you want to see more of these videos, make sure to give it a thumbs up down below and drop a bunch of comments giving me questions to use for the next one. I need to say a huge thank you to the Patreons. Thank you so much, Patreons, for helping me out every freaking week and letting me do what I love to do. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And a bunch of those questions came from you guys too, so thank you for those as well. Alright guys, you know what to do. Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Anyway guys, I'll catch you next time. See ya.